Hello everyone, I'm back to do the day 2 recap of the semifinals Airthings Masters. So in the first semifinal we saw Daniel Dubov and MVL had great difficulty and Radjabov and Aronian outplayed their respective opponents. Let's see what happened in day 2 of the semifinals. So here Daniel Dubov got this position with the white side. I'm going to give you two guesses. Try to see what you're going to do as white. Bishop g5 is considered normal, it's a queen's gambit. No, it was not bishop g5. And if you're wondering h4, no, it's not h4. In this position, Daniel Dubov played g4. And I have not seen this before, and that is Daniel Dubov for you, showing off aggressive intentions right from the start. Also, his situation was such that he had to be aggressive because he had to score heavily to beat Radjabov if he had to stay in the match. So, after g4, in this position, knight into g4 is a possibility, but white has rook g1. And then if you move back your knight, the pawn on g7 falls. And if you play h5 in this position, there is h3. So there was this g4 revolution that was started by Alexei Shirov and Shabalov in Semislav. And this is modern day chess. This move g2 to g4 has been employed in various other openings. One that comes to my mind instantly is this one in the Nimzo Indian. This is also tried by Zvagintsev, I think, this move g4. And I have myself played g4, h4, but it is in a later stage of the queen's gambit. For example, in this position, after bishop g5 castles, e3, h6, bishop h4, knight e7, bishop e7, queen e7. So here I have played g4. I've played this against Tanya Sastev. And yeah, this is a good line to... Interesting line, I would say. It's objectively not the best, but you can have a lot of fun playing this line. But this move that Daniel Dubov employs is the accelerated version of all the g4 ideas. And then in the game, he played g5, knight e4, bishop g2. And often they say that an attack on the flank has to be met with a counter in the center. This is, this idea of attacking in the center has multiple, possibilities. Like after you play a break in the center, the possibilities increase. Like you divert your opponent to center, and sometimes if the opponent's king is in the center, then opening up the position can help you. So all these factors contribute to this principle. That is why they say an attack on the flank should be met with a counter in the center. So he goes for c5, and after dc5 he goes knight c3, and then bishop takes c5. Now if you count the pieces, black has castled and got a piece outside, whereas white has developed two pieces. Not much has gone wrong yet, but you will see eventually that Radjabov brings in a lot of energy through his moves, and then this king will be in danger eventually. That's what happened. He opens his position, and because this rook is keeping an eye on b7, it makes sense to cover it so that the bishop on c8 can then move. So now you see black has completed development and is also connected his rooks. So it's a good idea to connect your rooks between move 14 to 18 or even before that. So black is heavily ahead in development because his pieces are also coordinated. And now this king on e1 doesn't know where to go because it cannot go on the queen side, cannot go on the king side because of the exposed position. There are no pawns to protect the king on the king or the queen side. So that was the reason why Daniel Dubov had a lot of trouble defending this position. And I'm going to show you a very nice tactic that comes here after queen g4. Take a moment to see what you would do as black. It's always CCTP, folks. Checks, captures, threats, and pawn breaks. If you take queen takes c4, he'll take rook takes c4. So first consider checks. Checks in the position rook d1, queen f2, rook e3. These are the three checks that come to mind. And yes, one of them is the answer. If you consider rook takes c3, that's correct, because if he takes fe3, there is a mate that follows after rook f1. So rook takes c3 happened, and then later he was able to win this because he is several pawns up. Though there were quite a few tricks that Daniel Dubov employed, but Radjabov was able to overcome all of that and then win the game. A very nice moment in this endgame was this moment in which black would have played knight e5, because if you take the knight, the pawn promotes. And let's say if you play something else, let's say you play knight b5 in this position, you can just play g5 check, push this king away from this zone, and once this king takes g5 or e5 h3, and then this pawn is unstoppable. But he did not go for this, but eventually won with g5, and that was enough. So he had again lost the first game, so now the second game. In the second game, Radjabov was white, and in this game, Radjabov employed a very slow and safe strategy. He tried to bore his opponent a bit, and then when he got his chance, he crushed him. So I'll just come to that critical moment. All this was fine. Yeah, in this position, if you look at it, not really, not much is happening really here, because queen on h6 and knight on h4, they are just with these two pieces you can't really attack anything, but you need a second weakness, or you need a weakness of some sort. Now even if there is, let's say, no darks for bishop, that alone cannot give white a full point, so you need a rook maybe on the h line to put more pressure. So here he's realized this, but he wants to wait for some moves, and so you play knight f3, b3. He makes all the useful moves, preparatory moves. So he's trying to bore his opponent with slow and steady moves, things like that. And now in this position, I'll come to a point where he starts getting chances. He plays h3. Now this is actually a move that has a plan. It not only prevents knight g4 or queen g4 ideas, it also has g4 idea in place. So considering that, I think this is a very nice move, a smart move. And then in this position, he got g4. Now slowly he has expanded on the king side, and now there is a threat already. Let's say if black plays a move like rook a8, you can see that the queen has no real square. So with this move h3, and it started with d5. By d5 he's taking away the square for his queen, and then he plays h3, and this is when probably Daniel Dubov realized that his queen is in danger. Then he had to go e5, because on rook e3 he is making a square for his queen on f4, but moving e5 means that the d6 is weak, and then that was a target, and that was enough for Radjabov to convert. He put a lot of pressure. And then there was another nice tactic that comes here after rook c b7. Take a moment to see what you would do as white. There are a lot of moves, but I just want to ask you one question. Is rook into c4 possible? Yes, it is possible, because queen takes c4 is not possible because of knight f6 check. And then the queen hangs. So that was a nice tactic. And in this moment, I was seeing the game live, and Daniel Dubov was having around 2.5-3 minutes. And it was Radjabov who's having less than 30 seconds. But he was able to spot all the correct moves and eventually win. Because this black king is exposed, all the pieces are on the king side here, but there's nobody to protect the king there, and then Radjabov won. So that means he is through to finals, and he will play the finals today. Then comes the match between Aronian and MVL. So in this situation, Aronian was leading, so day 2 MVL had to bounce back heavily. But in the first game, Aronian opted for this bishop g5 Grunfeld against the Grunfeld, and he did not get much. In the second game, instead of bishop g7, MVL went with c5. But I'll just take you through what happened here. He did not get any real advantage. He kept the position safe, and it made sense because Aronian was leading the match. He kept the position very solid, and you observe that it's bishop knight versus bishop bishop, okay? And something similar happens again. So in this game, white did not really get a lot of chances, and eventually they drew. Opposite color bishops, and not much can be said about it. It's a draw in this position. Then in the second game, it was Berlin, where Aronian was black and it was a normal Berlin, and they went into what we can call a known territory. Then in this game, I think the critical position came after, let me put that position. Yeah, in this position, he went for knight d6 check, and after king f8, he went for knight c8. Now in this game, if you think about it, it's again opposite color bishop, but I think white has more chances because of this pawn on c5. If this bishop is taken, then this pawn will need support, and if you support this pawn with b6, then the third rank, or let's say the sixth rank, will be in some danger. So I was considering that white has real chances in this position, because after king f7 you can go knight e7, king e7, and rook d1, and think of possible ideas like let's say bishop d6. For example, if white goes rook d1 here, bishop e4, bishop d6 check, king f6, bishop takes c5. I thought this is good enough, like good to play for more than equality, but it's not so easy because your pawns are also weak. He has bishop c2, and then if you play a move like let's say rook e1, then bishop into b3. So black has enough resources, but it is white who is pushing. So this is my this was my conclusion when I was watching the game. Eventually, after king h2, after a few moves, they ended the game in a draw. So white was ready, trying to push, but Aronian held it very strongly, and then the game ended in a draw. Like the position was good enough. I mean, he had sufficient resources to hold. That is what I would say. So the second game ended in a draw. Then I'm coming to the game in which Aronian outplays his opponent move by move. I'm coming to that game. This was a Grunfeld in which he played c5. In the first game there was bishop g7, and in the second game there is c5. So in this you can also guess the move along with me. I'm coming to the position right after the opening. Yeah. Now black wants to go b6, b7 or bd7 someday. So first rook b1, preventing all of that. And then now he's playing f6 so that he keeps a cover on e5 and g5, and also makes square for his king on f7. What would you do as white? Black would also be threatening to go g5. Keep that in mind. So Aronian goes h4, which I like very much because it's discouraging any kind of g5 ideas. Bishop g4 check happened, king d1. Now the king can afford to play, white can afford to play his king on d1 because there is no immediate pawn break that can disrupt white's position. So bishop e7 happened, then bishop c4, knight a5, bishop comes back to d3, bishop d7. So with this little maneuver, black has managed to support the pawn on b7, and the bishop is also developed. So for a moment it feels like black has sorted his opening problems. So king e2, castles e4, and then rook a c8. And in this position, take a moment to see what you would do as white. I think this is one of the important positions of this game. If you don't play this move, then it's not easy to claim an advantage. So if you observe in this position, the knight is protecting the pawn on b7. And if you are able to attack this knight, then that means you are indirectly attacking the pawn on b7. So that's what happened. Bishop d2 attacking the knight on a5. And after b6, he just took that pawn, exchanged that knight and got his rook to 7th rank. So he has transformed his advantage now to, let's say, he was ahead in development, and now he has a rook on the 7th rank. But in return, he has given up his bishop. So again, you see it's two bishop versus knight and bishop. And then after rook fd8, he has won a pawn. Now after rook b8, you see black wants to go to b2. How are you going to deal with this threat? Okay, so he goes rook c1. The idea is if you go rook b2 check, he has rook c2, and this happened in the game. So again you see he has kept it simple, his position was solid, and he was a pawn up. And now he is also threatening rook takes d7. So MVL played king f8, and then came the pawn break with e5, because then the knight can then hope to go to e5, or if black plays f5, then white could go with his knight to g5, attack his pawn again on e6. So fe5 followed, knight e5, and then king e3. Now white is a clear pawn up, a healthy pawn up. There is no counterplay whatsoever. And then Aronian managed to win this game. It took a while, but he was never in danger, and he managed to win the game. So this one tactic I would say, bishop takes f4 is not possible because of knight g6. Then he converted the game into a win. And since in these three games Aronian had already won, the match was good enough, and Aronian cruised through finals. So now he is in finals, and that means Aronian and Radjabov will both play the finals. It will be a very exciting match. Radjabov is representing Azerbaijan and Aronian Armenia. It's a good clash, and It's a clash of styles also. Aggressive, Aronian is positional, sometimes dynamic, whereas Radjabov is a King's Indian guy. It'll be very interesting to see what happens in their final match. I hope you liked the recap, and I'll be back with another one soon. Until then, take care. Bye bye.